We are back. It is the Fight Season podcast. It's me, Jesse Rowe with Inside Fighting, joined once again by Adam Fishkin. Adam, I don't know if you caught UFC 301, but there's a few interesting storylines to talk about from it. But first off, how are you? And did you get a chance to check out the fights this weekend?
I did. I unfortunately missed the main event, which sucked. But I was running a half marathon the next day, so I thought I should get some sleep.
Wow.
Super upset I missed it, but I caught the backflip, and that was the highlight of my night.
Nice flex, saying that you had to run a half marathon, making everybody feel bad about it.
Hey, it was my first. I don't feel too bad.
Yeah. You weren't the only one who missed the main event. Like half of the crowd missed the main event too, apparently. I don't know if you saw that. They did not show up in Brazil. I don't know if you noticed, but like the same thing happened last year when Jamal Hill won. There was like nobody in. Glover Teixeira retires and like half the crowd was empty. But something's going on. They gotta rethink that strategy with Brazil.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because Brazil is such a crazed nation for the MMA world, you know? And when it comes to soccer, they show up day and night, right?
Yeah.
I know the Madonna concert took place that night, so like maybe that played a role. And I was gonna say that there was no big main event with a massive UFC fighter,
right?
Or a massive Brazilian UFC fighter, but at the same time, Jose Aldo's on the card, so it's just like a weird scenario.
It was, by the way, it was 2 million people supposedly were at that Madonna concert, so I guess that would play a role. The crowd did look pretty somewhat full when Aldo was out there. Pantoja is Brazilian. He's obviously not a huge star. I think partly it's that they used up Oliveira, Pereira, and who else was on UFC 300? There was somebody else. Maybe no, it wasn't. Nobody else was on. But I was thinking of Gilbert Burns because I saw a photo of the three of them together this last weekend. But so I think that's part of it. I think that if you had, in an ideal world, they would have preferred to have Pereira and Oliveira on this card. But they did what they had to do to sell UFC 300. Either way, it was a good main event. It was a good fight, a very competitive fight. I guess this just sort of, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're obviously a few days past it now. I was a little bit bummed out with the ending because you and I both picked Steve Erceg to win, and I thought he was doing great in the fight. I thought that he really put himself in a good position to win. But do you think he blew it? Do you think he blew that? He's a number 10 fighter. Not a lot of guys get that opportunity. Do you feel like he kind of blew his shot with going for that takedown in that final round?
Well, he definitely blew his chance of being a champion that night by going for that takedown late in the fifth. I know I mentioned I didn't watch the main event, but I did rewatch it the day after, so don't come at me in the comments.
Yeah,
but I don't want to say he blew it. This was only his fourth fight in the UFC, which is insane for your fourth fight to be for a championship fight, being the number 10 ranked fighter. But at the same time, I think this might be like one of those rare occurrences where he's actually going to jump in the rankings after a loss.
He jumped to 9, by the way. He moved up one spot. He went from 10 to 9. I thought it was going to be more than that, but he went from 10 to 9.
Very interesting. Very interesting, because I thought he put up a better fight than Royval and Moreno did against Pantoja, which might be a hot take. I don't think it is, but I think a lot of people will agree with that one. I thought he was going to jump to top 5. I did not realize he was only in the 9th. So that's kind of disappointing. But still, he definitely didn't blow it. I think he's going to get a chance to, I think he's going to put in probably 2 or 3 more fights before he gets another shot at the belt. And one of those 2 to 3 fights, or maybe both of them, are going to be against Royval or Moreno, I'd assume, before he gets back in there. But there's a very clear path, in my opinion, for him to come back to that championship bout.
Yeah, Moreno's going to be out for a while. He said that he's sort of taking a little bit of a break. But I think Royval does make some sense, simply because I do think Erceg proved that he belongs, which is good. He proved that he deserved to be there, that it wasn't like a bad decision on UFC's part. He was there. He belonged. And there were actually a lot of people who felt like he got robbed on the scorecards. I didn't agree with that. I feel like that was overstating it. I think a lot of that is just because people don't like Pantoja's style, because he's sort of I don't want to say a boring fighter, but he's a heavy grappling fighter. So it's a lot of control time, which I think people don't love. It's the same thing with Aljamain Sterling. People don't love
I
that
was
style of
just
fighting.
gonna say,
Yeah.
Pantoja gets equal amount of love as Aljo does,
Yeah.
which is none.
So, but I think that Pantoja won the fight. I think it was not obvious, but it was close. But I think that they got the scorecards correct. That being said, I do think he's probably going to be 2 fights away now. He probably has to win. He'll probably have to fight a guy like Manel Kopp. Who knows? Maybe him versus Muhammad Mokaev would be interesting. I don't know. But either way, it was a good fight. A cool thing that happened, though, was during the broadcast, Shogun Rua, legend, got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And that was very cool to see. It was in front of the Brazilian crowd. So that was one of the feel good moments of the card. Yeah, I don't know. Did you see that? What did you think? I mean, because they've done this now for a few of these, where like it seems like every pay-per-view they're busting out their new induction into the Hall of Fame. It's kind of cool to be that we've been watching the UFC for long enough now that we're starting to see these guys get put into the Hall of Fame. And it just makes you realize how new this is, because they only started putting guys in the Hall of Fame like a few years ago.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's cool. The UFC Hall of Fame is basically new, like you mentioned. So whenever they do these, I love to see it. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in other sports they have like a whole event for Hall of Fame induction days, right? So it's like a bunch of people come up on stage. It's like you induct multiple people. Is that fair to say, or am I wrong there?
Yeah, I think I don't remember exactly how the UFC does this, because I know that Khabib was inducted 2 years ago along with Cormier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly how it was done, but they have like MMA Honors Weekend. It's during International Fight Week. I know that they have like the MMA Honors Award ceremony and stuff like that. So they will have things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that they're still so new to this that we're not at a point where they can really induct like 5 people at once. It's going to be like one guy at a time here and there. So
That's cool.
it's just not as prestigious as other sports yet, I think is the point. It's getting there.
It's new.
We're so
It's
new.
new.
Yeah.
We'll rerun this episode in 30 years time, and
Yeah.
it'll be a different story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say with the Hall of Fame and everything taking place, I was actually thinking a lot about which current fighters, and maybe some less active fighters in the moment, but which UFC fighters should get inducted to the Hall of Fame. So I have a bit of a list here that I wanted to run through with you.
Okay.
And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. Since we were on UFC 3-1 in Brazil, I'm going to start off with a couple of Brazilian fighters. So first up, I got Alex Pereira. What are your thoughts on him?
I think Alex Pereira is kind of like he might not be. Here's the thing. He could be inducted right now in some people's eyes, because he certainly is in the Combat Sports Hall of Fame. Some people would consider him the Combat Sports GOAT, considering he was a 2-division champion in Glory Kickboxing, and then he becomes a 2-division champion in the UFC, being the middleweight and the light heavyweight champion. The problem is he just hasn't had that many fights in the UFC, so it might be a little bit hard for people to comprehend that he's already a Hall of Famer, but I kind of think he's already a Hall of Famer. I think he's done enough. I think with one more title defense, it's undeniable, because that would be 3 times you win the belt at light heavyweight. That would be 4 championships in the UFC in the span of like 3 years. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's tough, but yeah, I do think he's there.
I agree. I think a interesting way to think about it is, let's say he retired today. Does he make it or not? And I think that if he were to just, tweet, "Hey, I'm retiring," there would be a massive, all the people who are kind of on the fence, I think they would switch over to, yes, he does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And although I agree with you, I think he does need one more defense to really prove it. We've never seen a career like his in the UFC, and therefore, just based off that merit alone, he should probably be inducted.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with
Yeah.
that. I think it all comes down to when you get your opportunities, do you rise to the occasion? And if you do, then
Yeah.
you deserve it. Like there are some guys in like baseball that had very short-lived careers, but they made the most of it, and because of that, they're Hall of Famers. So it's not always about accruing stats; it's about maximizing opportunities.
Yep. Yep. No, I agree with you. Um, so with Pereira out of the way, that's Brazilian number one. Let's go to Brazilian number two. Charles de Bronx Oliveira. What are your thoughts on him? Hall of Famer or not?
This one, oddly enough, even though he's been in the UFC for longer, it feels a little tougher simply because he does have a lot of losses in the UFC. But I think he is simply because of the fact that he defended his belt multiple times. He also has like the most submissions in the UFC history, I believe. I believe he does. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure he does. So he has the most submissions, long-standing just a long-standing hero of that division, and he's a huge hero for the people of Brazil. He's done a lot for just expanding the sport. He's a huge star, former champion. I think he's there, but he did need to switch divisions in order to get to where he is, and it did happen later in his career. So for a long time he was kind of a journeyman, and then in the past few years he becomes a champion. I'll give it to him. I think he's in there.
I agree. I think the Hall of Fame is more than just wins and losses. I think it's what you've done for the sport, what you've done in the sport. So yeah, with him, what was it? He had the most finishes, right? You said 20, I
Yeah,
think, in the UFC.
yeah.
So just off that alone, you're changing the sport, you're changing the way it's, I don't want to say the way it's played, but the way it's fought, I guess. And at the same time, the legend he's become in Brazil, I think just off of those few things, in combination, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But speaking of someone who has their fair share of losses in the UFC and potentially, in my opinion, I'll share first before I share his name. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Almost undeniable, even though he's got a good chunk of losses. Nate Diaz, does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame or not?
Yeah, I mean, never been champion, and he's only fought for the title, I believe, once or twice. I know he lost to Benson Henderson for the lightweight title, I believe. The Diaz brothers, like what they have done for the sport and the growth of the sport, can't be understated. I mean, Nate Diaz beat Conor McGregor when he was undefeated. That propelled him into stardom, and it also propelled this concept that the guy that beats Conor gains a level of stardom that they'd never dreamed possible. Same thing with Dustin Poirier happened when he beat Conor McGregor. What Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz have done for the sport beyond just beating Conor McGregor is undeniable. They are arguably the biggest pay-per-view draws in terms of fighters outside of Conor McGregor. If you look at the pay-per-view draws, guys that have brought in the most money for the company, Nate Diaz is up there as one of the top guys. I think that counts for something. Star power does count for something. I think like on merits of your stats, he probably doesn't deserve to get in. But on merits of what you do for the sport and growing the sport, absolutely. I think him and his brother should go in there together, to be honest. If they're going to do it, they should go in on the same day. For the record, Nate Diaz has said, fuck the UFC Hall of Fame. So I don't know if he cares all that much.
He might not be there on stage to accept it,
Yeah,
but they might
exactly.
accept him anyway. No, I think if you're one of those people who say the UFC couldn't be what it is today without Conor McGregor, then on that merit alone, you have to include Nate Diaz in the Hall of Fame because Conor McGregor wouldn't be who he is, and the UFC wouldn't be where they're at without that Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz beef back in the day. That really, I think, is what shot Conor McGregor to stardom at the end of the day. And that was like the beginning of it all was those two fights. So you have to, I think.
I would disagree with you there. I do think Conor was already there. I think that it shot Nate to stardom. But I know what you're saying. I feel like that rivalry it made Conor bigger because he finally met his match in a way.
Yeah.
That was like the first time that he met his match. I think Conor was already going there anyway. But I understand why you say that because it was like they needed somebody that could beat him to like legitimize the sport a little bit more too. Like, hey, you have a guy that could finally get him. Finally got Conor. Then you don't just have 1 star. Now you have 2 stars, and that's
Yeah.
why it was so important.
Yeah, you're right. Conor was already a star, but
Yeah.
I think that loss, you're right. It just almost like doubled his stardom. It just
Yeah.
made him from a star to a bigger star. So
Yeah.
anyway, enough Nate Diaz. I'm gonna throw one more at you, and this is my fun one. We've already talked about him on the podcast, but Aljamain Sterling. Let's go with him. Hall of Famer or non Hall of Famer?
How much do you want to upset UFC fans right now?
How much do you want? Do you have to answer the
Yeah.
question?
This one's tough. It's a good question. How much weight does being a champion carry in the sport? Like a long-standing. I mean, Sean O'Malley said that Aljamain Sterling is the best bantamweight of all time. And if that's true, and you want to legitimize the bantamweight division, then you have to say, yes, he is. He's certainly not the most popular fighter of all time. He's certainly not the most entertaining fighter of all time. But in terms of accomplishments, there are few who have done what Aljamain Sterling has done. I think that a lot of people have trouble getting past the fact that the first time he won the title was via DQ to Peter Yan, where he took the illegal knee and then ended up winning on the disqualification. Because that was a fight he was going to lose if that didn't happen. So I think there are a lot of people who feel like his title run wouldn't have happened. But the fact of the matter is, the numbers are there. The championships are there. I'm not there yet calling him a Hall of Famer, but I think that when the time comes, I think he will get in. If you want to legitimize championships in your sport and why it's important, then you have to legitimize it when there's the guy that has one of the longest championship runs out of anybody.
I agree. I do think that based off of accomplishments alone, he does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But at the end of the day, who makes that decision? The UFC. And I don't think the UFC like Aljo enough.
Yeah.
To put him in there. I think another cop-out could be potentially that Izzy and Usman went on their runs around the same time, and they did it in much more spectacular fashion, I guess you could say. And so the UFC might, you're right, they might want to legitimize the championships within their sport, but they might do that with Izzy and Usman and say, forget it to Aljo. So I think it's just like a time will tell sort of thing. I think it's unfortunate if you're Aljo, but at the same time, it is what it is. There's no other way to put it.
Well, I was just thinking about it, and I'm thinking about when they're inducting these guys or when they're announcing it at these events, they put up like the highlight reels of the fighters, right? To like hype it up. They have to put together this highlight reel video for Aljo of him getting kneed in the head by Peter Yan. And then, his fight versus Cejudo wasn't all that great. He beat up TJ Dillashaw with like one shoulder. It's kind of I don't know. Maybe I might be rethinking this. I'm like, I think he deserves to be there on merit. I don't know if the UFC wants to put him in front of a crowd and do the whole presentation. Like, I don't know. I just don't know if they want to do that. I think he gets in. Put some respect on his name. Put some respect on his name.
I agree. But yeah, I guess it really is just like time will tell, right?
I want to do this more though. We should do this like we should go through the list of on future episodes of other fighters and see if they deserve a shot in, because there's some other names here that I think are kind of funny that
I think every time somebody gets inducted to the Hall of Fame, we'll run this back.
Okay.
And see who else makes it and who doesn't make it.
I like that. I think we'd agree that Conor McGregor is a future Hall of Famer, and he's fighting Michael Chandler. This is my segue. That was a bad segue, but whatever. We're gonna roll with it anyway. He had some tweets directed at Sean O'Malley and Ryan Garcia in the wake of Ryan Garcia testing. Have we talked about this yet? I don't think we have.
I don't think we have. No.
Ryan Garcia testing positive for ostarine in his system, it's not a steroid. A lot of people say that it's a steroid. It is a SARM, which is it's basically what ostarine is. It helps you retain muscle after you've worked out, after you've gotten in your reps and everything. Muscle kind of deteriorates after a few days of not working out. It helps the muscles stay longer, just stay intact longer. And they found ostarine in Ryan Garcia's system, tested the night of the Devin Haney fight and the night before and the night of the Devin Haney fight. And Conor McGregor put out a tweet. I'm not going to repeat it, but he said some nasty things. He's basically saying that he should off himself if he actually did cheat, that he's that he cheated the weight and he cheated the urine tests. And then he threw Sean O'Malley's name in there. And I was just curious what you thought when you saw the tweet. And is that a fight you'd be interested in? Because now he's gone after Sean O'Malley, who was going to be wanted to fight Ryan Garcia anyway, and now Conor's in the middle of it. I don't know what's going on. A lot of people think Conor might have been celebrating a little bit that night when he put those tweets out, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah. So to answer your question directly, do I want to see Conor versus O'Malley or Conor versus Garcia?
I don't even know where I'm really going with that.
I'll answer both. Yeah. How about that? Well, okay, let's start with Conor versus Garcia. I don't want to see it. I don't think I get could be fun. It's not as fun as Conor versus Floyd was. I think O'Malley Garcia could actually be a fun fight potentially. Like that one I'd be more open to than Conor and Ryan. But no. So I'm gonna scratch that off immediately, I guess. Conor O'Malley, there could be some fun there. It was like one of those situations where, like they say, you don't want to meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be disappointed. Well, I think that just kind of happened with O'Malley and McGregor, where O'Malley has always been a McGregor fan. He's always talked very positively about McGregor. He's talked about the things he's done for the sport, and he's talked about how he's taken inspiration by what Conor has done and implemented into his own game. And that's why O'Malley is arguably the most marketable fighter in the UFC at the moment, right? So I didn't like seeing Conor take shots at O'Malley for those reasons.
Yeah.
But would I want to see them fight? I think it's like one of those past versus present situations. And yeah, I think it'd be fun to see. So that I'm all for.
Yeah, I'm asking the question and I'm realizing like the weight wouldn't even make sense because Conor's fighting at 170 and these guys both fight like in 135, 140.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make a ton of sense why I'm even asking that question. I guess I'm curious why he went after O'Malley. People think that Conor just was probably like a little drunk or on something else when he was tweeting all this. So that's, that's speculation, that's alleged. But I guess it like just leads me to this idea that like Sean O'Malley said that he thinks that there might be some like jealousy here on Conor's part, that he sees that Conor sees that O'Malley is kind of like going up, whereas Conor's going down. And that Conor might resent that in some way. I don't know why O'Malley used the word jealousy, but I understand sort of the point he was trying to make. Do you see any truth in that? That there might be, because Conor has made so much money, like so much money that like, and we're going to get to that in a bit, just how much money it is. But like, do you think that there's any possible chance that he sort of like resents somebody else's star rising to that potential level? Which I don't think O'Malley will ever attain, but like, do you think he possibly resents it?
So I think you had two things there you brought up. Why did McGregor do it? Just period. I think asking why McGregor does anything is a question that you can leave yourself stumped for days at a time with anything he does. Now, did he do this out of jealousy? 0% chance. I agree. I don't think McGregor has a reason to be jealous of anyone, but did McGregor see this as a marketable opportunity to get his name back in the mix to hype up the Chandler fight as more eyes are on him? Yeah, 100%. I think like we just mentioned, McGregor, marketing genius. He knows what's up. He knows when to take advantage of an opportunity, whether he's sober or not. He'll jump on the opportunity, and maybe if he's not sober, he takes it a little too far, or that's just him in general. But it is what it is. It's a marketing opportunity, and he took full advantage of it, and I commend him for that.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny, the idea that Conor is like even thinking about O'Malley in those terms. But I completely agree with you. I think Conor he knows how to find something that's in the news and sort of put himself in there. But that would kind of validate what O'Malley's saying a little bit, is that Conor's trying to boost up his name off of the biggest story going on in combat sports right now. It was just interesting that he threw O'Malley's name in there too, because nobody was talking about O'Malley. Like the thing that he was referring to is that O'Malley tested positive for Ostarine, the same thing that Ryan Garcia tested positive for. He tested positive back in like 2019 or something, which was actually an out of competition test. Apparently it was a tainted supplement. Who knows with this stuff, but
Yeah.
just interesting. Speaking of Ryan Garcia, though, we do have one last thing to cover here. I'm guessing you saw Devin Haney and Gervonta Davis kind of got into it in Las Vegas, which I almost wonder if it was a little staged or not. I don't know. A lot of people might disagree with me.
I
Some of these
saw that.
blocks,
I saw
yeah,
people saying that, but
yeah,
I disagree with that. I think the reason it happened, if anything, is that Tank backed up Garcia when it
right.
came to the tests. So I think that could have been the disagreement. But yes, I did see that whole altercation, I guess you could say.
It's funny to me that Gervonta Davis and Devin Haney would be getting into a fight over Ryan Garcia. Just
Yeah,
kind of hilarious.
and
Well, I
crazy.
think it's important. It's important for Tank to defend Garcia's victory because it validates his victory over Garcia. It makes his, because he needs it to be a legitimate victory to make his victory over Garcia look that much better, because he wants to prove that he's the best in the world. So if, hey, I beat the guy that beat Devin Haney legitimately, I didn't beat the guy who had to cheat to beat Devin Haney. You know what I mean? That's where I think that's why Gervonta is fully incentivized to defend Garcia, whether or not it's true or not. But I don't know. Have we gone over this? I don't remember. Did we go over whether or not we think that there's any sort of like funny business going on with this test, this Ostarine test?
I'm not sure, honestly. We've talked about it between us. I just don't
Well,
know if it was
yeah,
recorded
because
or not.
Gervonta's whole point is that like he thinks that they're trying to just delegitimize the win over Haney so that they can get the fight taken off of his record. I have some questions about how I guess how possible that is, because you'd have to have a lot of people in on it, quote unquote, in order to just put a false test out there, or
Yeah.
to taint a supplement, or to taint a drug test. It feels like a lot of people would have to be in on it, but they're implying that this guy Victor Conti, who is part of, you made the TikTok on it, that's what it was, that
That's
this
what it
guy
was.
Victor Conti was somehow, who's part of VADA, was somehow in on it. I have my doubts that that's even possible, but I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that there's any legitimacy to that?
I made a TikTok about it. You're
Yeah,
right. And I think I finished up that TikTok saying that there is like a fishy smell going on, like
yeah,
there's something that there's just too many things that seem odd to all occur at the same time for something fishy to not be going on. But at the same time, just because it's happening doesn't mean that, or what do they call it? Correlation. It doesn't mean it's causation, right?
right.
So yes, there's a lot of weird things going on, but I don't think that's it. So to answer your question, no, I don't think there's anything funny going on. I think there's a very good chance Garcia was taking a supplement that he wasn't supposed to be taking. I think it happens a lot in the fighting world. And I think people cycle it properly, right? Because when you
Yeah,
cycle, you get out of your system, you can test clean. I think there might have been just a mishap on their end, where they didn't cycle it properly or something like that. Tough situation. I don't know what they're gonna do because I think he requested the B sample to be tested immediately. So I don't know
yeah,
how long something like that takes. I think it's like 10 days or so. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see what happens because it does set up like a couple interesting avenues, right? Like if he did
yeah.
test positive, are they running it back? They should, but will
Well,
they?
or it's going to completely erase Garcia's win over Haney, and then we're looking at Haney still being undefeated. Even though we have video evidence of this fight happening, that Haney's loss would be expunged, Garcia's win would be expunged, and then that's a, to me, that should be last resort. I don't agree with that at all. but I think it's one of those situations where like both things could possibly be true, where it's like there is funny business, but it was also there's potentially it was a tainted supplement where he wasn't cheating, but that it like is being maybe like I don't even know how I'm trying to say that. I agree with you. I feel like there is something weird going on, but I still think it's possible that it was in his system. So
Yeah,
who
yeah,
knows? Either
it
way,
happens all the time. It happens all
yeah,
the time in the sports world where they'll take a supplement and that supplement will contain a banned substance,
yeah,
and that's what they get dinged on. But
right.
it would just be an unfortunate situation where you can't really prove that, and if it's there, and therefore it should be a no contest, right?
This actually
So
happened to Daniel Rodriguez too. D-Rod, friend of the
yeah,
channel. He had ostarine in his system, and that was actually a tainted supplement. UFC they just slapped him on the wrist, and it turns out he's good. He's going to be back. He's fighting in Saudi Arabia against Kelvin Gastelum. So I'm hoping that's what happens because you
yeah,
don't want to see the sport go that way.
no,
Either
no, not
way,
at all.
Ryan Garcia made $50 million. He's good.
And
He'll be
he
just fine.
still made his 35 or whatever
Yeah,
it was. So
yeah. Um,
they're both walking out with heavy pockets.
Speaking of money,
Yeah.
we'll end on this because this is actually a fun one. I want to have this conversation with you. Gervonta Davis was doing an interview where he was talking about Floyd. He's got some beef with Floyd right now, so just take everything with a grain of salt because Tank's been claiming that Floyd is stuck in Abu Dhabi or something that he can't get out because he owes people money. There's all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah.
But Gervonta Davis said that he has surpassed Floyd Mayweather in terms of money made, uh, or that he's going to surpass him. That's nonsense, right? There's
Yeah.
no chance that that's true.
I mean, look, we chatted about this quickly before the podcast. Has he made more money than Floyd Mayweather? I agree with you. 0% chance.
Yeah,
Has he made more money than Floyd Mayweather by boxing? Um, there's a chance simply because of inflation and the times that they were fighting,
yeah,
right? But at the same time, I forget what it was, but didn't Floyd make like 200 plus million from the Conor fight?
right. I
Yeah.
immediately was
So
just
like
like,
that fight
hasn't he
alone,
made more from that fight alone?
yeah.
Yeah,
So that fight alone was just
yeah,
bigger than anything Tank has ever done, right? But I don't know. I don't know the stats on how much Tank got paid for like fighting Garcia, for example. You
right,
know, so there could be it could be close if it was just earnings from boxing.
right. Well,
Yeah.
it got me thinking. I don't know. Do you want to pose the question, or do you want me to pose the question here?
Whew. No, let's run it. I know where the question's going, so I'll let you finish up
Okay.
here.
Well, it just got me thinking because you mentioned the Conor fight, and Conor has made just so much money in the UFC, and if you look at like the list of how much money, I mean, he's made actually you had the numbers, but I think it was like
Yeah.
he's only made like 37 million in the past 4 years in terms of fighting, but he's made something like 10 times that just from his outside of competition business ventures. Like you said, I think he made like 100 million at least in the Floyd fight.
Yeah.
He sold his whiskey company for something like 500 million. I forget what it was.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is there any fighter on the roster of the UFC that you think could ever attain Conor McGregor level wealth? Somebody that could catch Conor McGregor. Who would it be?
Interesting. So I don't like the wealth question because I think Conor McGregor is an incredible businessman, and that is
Yeah.
very rare in the UFC, and more or just very rare in general for you to be as good at business as Conor is. But it's something that as a fan, you can't really see from the outside. We can't really tell who's a good business person, right? So I want to rephrase the question as to which UFC fighter can make more money in the UFC than Conor has. And the number I saw online was that Conor made about 115 million in the UFC. And if that's the case, that's like with pay-per-views and everything. And I believe that's not that doesn't include the Floyd Mayweather fight. So which fighter can earn 115 million or more fighting in the UFC? I think there's two names at the moment that come off the top of my head. Number one, we've talked about him, Sean O'Malley.
Right.
If he continues fighting the way he's fighting, if he continues being a champion, if he goes on a run, if he continues being as marketable as he is, not only on his own, but with other fighters like Merab Dvalishvili, using his name to hype themselves up, that only makes O'Malley bigger. I think he's got a very good chance at doing better just because of how much the UFC has grown since Conor has made all his earnings in the UFC.
Right.
So that's my first answer. And my second answer, I think, is actually kind of it's gonna surprise you. But I think this person is so big considering where he's originally from that with so much power behind the countries that are supporting him, along with,
I
you
know
know,
where you're going.
if he wins a
Okay.
few more fights, if he continues being a champion, I think Ilia Topuria.
Yep.
And
No,
I
it's
don't
it.
think a lot of people think of that one, but he's massive in Spain.
Yeah.
To be able to sell out, like I don't think people in North America understand how big like the Santiago Bernabeu is in Madrid. It is a massive stadium. It
Yeah.
is teched out. Just to put this into perspective, the technology that stadium uses is bigger than any stadium in the world. I think they have this technology where they, after every game, they take I think it's real grass, not turf. They take the grass off of the field, they lift it up, put it underneath the stadium to be able to control its environment, so it's in pristine condition every
Oh,
time
wow.
the Real Madrid team plays. So that's the type of tech that goes behind. That's the amount of money that goes behind that stadium, and that's the amount of money that can go behind Topuria if he continues being a champion and fights a few times in Spain, as well as in Georgia, somewhere else in Europe. He'll have if he wins, if he defends his title 3 to 5 more times, bring it back to the US, he'll be a star. So there's a good chance for him, I think.
Yeah, so that Topuria was going to be my answer too. And do I think he's going to get to Conor McGregor wealth? Probably not. But the reason why, and I think you pointed it out, is like we as Americans have to take ourselves out of like the bubble of like, because we see Sean O'Malley as like a bigger star here, and he's like hanging with the Nelk boys and things like that. That means that he is bigger because he's bigger with the kids. He's huge on social media and everything. That he's by nature he's bigger. The thing about Topuria is that we have to remember. By the way, Topuria said that he's going to be the highest paid athlete next year in the world. That's capping too. That sounds like Gervonta talk, but
Yeah.
because he made 300K from the Volk fight, so he would have to make like 1,000 times that in order to be the even close. The
Yeah.
reason why I think it's possible for him specifically, or he will be the closest to McGregor, he's gonna get like brand deals in Spain that Sean O'Malley hasn't even like considered here. Like Ilia Topuria is gonna like make deals with like fashion companies. Like he could sign like a $10 million deal with like Dior or like one of those big European fashion companies. He has an entire continent behind him.
Yeah.
Where he's going to be like he did I've mentioned this a lot. He did a collaboration post with Real Madrid that has like 250 million followers. It's so massive. I think he's grown something like 3 million Instagram followers since he won. Yeah, and I think that Topuria's it's not going to be defined by the money he makes in the octagon. It's going to be defined by how much he makes outside of it, right? And so if we're
Yeah.
thinking that way, Topuria is going to be like doing deals with companies that like that Sean O'Malley just won't. And I'm talking about companies that have so much money,
Yeah.
and I could just see Topuria becoming like more than just a more than just like a social media star. Like he's actually going to be like brand ambassador. He's going to be paid for things that we can't even comprehend yet. He's such a big star, but you're right. He has to keep winning. And that's what's important. That if he keeps winning, if he can beat Max Holloway in Spain, if he could win that fight, that would just, he's going to
Yeah.
skyrocket, and he's going to be doing, promotional stuff for Louis Vuitton. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
going to be
He
massive.
really is. Yeah, because
Yeah.
he's probably going to run it back with Volk, and then he's probably going to fight
I think
Holloway.
Holloway. I think it's going to be Holloway.
Using Holloway before Volk.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I
That's
was
my
watching
guess. If I'm
Volk.
guessing what's going to happen, it's going to be Holloway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I was watching Volk. It was on an Australian show, like media opportunity for Volk in Australia, whatever. And he was talking about the whole fight with Topuria and all that. And he mentioned how he doesn't want to fight till the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I believe he confirmed on that fight or on that interview that Madrid isn't going to have, they don't have room to host this fight in 2024. So,
I see. Yeah, okay.
Meaning that he wouldn't be able to fight in Spain in 2024. And Topuria going a whole year without fighting seems insane to me. So that's why I think that him and Volk can and should run it back before then, and then to fight in 2025, hopefully early 2025, in Spain as well. But yeah, he's probably like, if he wins those two, he's already a star. But he needs that third and fourth, I think, to continue going. Hopefully, to get a big name, and then he can keep it up. But another point, real quick, because we'll wrap it up here. We've been going. This is our longest episode in a while.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the Latino community in the U.S. We've seen the love Mexico gives Mexican fighters, but you have to keep in mind that they give that same amount of love to any Latino. So I know Spain isn't technically Latino, but Spanish people love Spanish people. They get along. The entire Latino community in the U.S. is also going to be behind Topuria a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Well, just FYI, Sean O'Malley does consider himself Mexican American because he does have a child with a Mexican woman. His daughter is Mexican. Just FYI. So it's debatable about who has the Latino vote in America, if it's Sean O'Malley or if it's Ilia Topuria. But your point does remain. I like that point. But yeah, I just don't see the whole country of the United States behind Sean O'Malley simply because Sean O'Malley has competition within the United States, whereas Ilia Topuria has all of Europe. Like, what competition does he have in Europe in terms of who he's fighting in the division? I mean, like Movsar, Evloev. Like, there's really not much. Other than that, it's mostly Americans and Australians. So
yeah.
Anyways,
no, exactly. And who are we talking about here? Conor McGregor. How's he done it? He's Irish. Ireland supported him. Who else supported him? All of Europe, and he won half the votes in the U.S. So he make a star, right?
Exactly. So, the Spanish MMA boom is coming from this, and it's going to be because of Ilia Topuria. So.